So a little over a week ago, I made a video covering an article from, I think it was called The Gamer. I don't know all these game journalists, they're really all the same, but anyways. It was Baldur's Gate 3 actress on board with the fan theory of Samus being a badass trans bounty hunter. Now, a lot of people in my comment section criticize me for my opinions and accuse me of engaging in the culture war, being a rage-baiting grifter and all that, you know, the usual stuff. And I don't really care about getting ratioed online. When I disconnect from the internet, I exist in the real world, and that's the last thing I'm thinking about when I'm going about my day. But today, we're not going to be in the real world. Anyways, the point of my video, like a lot of my videos delving into the sensitive topics, was about how mainstream media uses predictive programming, a type of soft exposure to build a narrative and normalize certain things. That way, when we start seeing things we don't normally accept that doesn't reflect the culture of our society, not the culture of the internet, well, by the time we have enough of it forced into our thoughts, we begin to accept these things as normal. It feels less like PTSD, and thus we become programmed. Once the mind becomes fractured, you can build whatever illusionary wall you want around it, and it becomes reality. Well, not soon after my video on that god-awful article, we start seeing a flood of news coming into the gaming space. Isn't it weird how I keep predicting these things? When people tell me, oh, but Devin, you can't just look at one example of something and go to the extreme and call it predictive programming. Well, the US House has just passed legislation to criminalize transgender surgeries, hormones, and treatments for minors. And the usual suspects have crawled out of their holes again, like David Jaffe, for example, who is a strong supporter for gender-affirming care for minors. He even has a transgender child himself. And he's here to let the most vulnerable people on this earth know that he has their backs, and he thinks this decision is so horrible and cruel. This isn't child mutilation. He didn't push this on his kids. He isn't the bad guy in this situation. He's just a loving father. Go ahead and tell yourself that, Jaffe. But we can all see the guilt you struggle with. We can all hear it in the tone of your voice when you walk the thin line of pandering to both sides. You can't backpedal your way out of this one, so you have to sell the lie the best you can. So let me ask you this, Jaffe. Is it a Helix Midnight Lux, a Nectar Premier, or maybe you're a back sleeper? Is it a Dream Cloud? Maybe a Wink Bed Plus? I just want to know, what's the best mattress that money can buy? If I haven't made it clear enough, I'm asking you, how do you sleep at night? And then we have the Larian employee, the claims of assault and having to be around fascists in the workplace, coming from Hash Bandicoot, the usual buzzwords they like to throw around like bigots and how they're so concerned for minorities in the studio. And as always, it's coming from, you guessed it, a trans woman. Right before activists were being placed front and center on the news as the government was moving towards banning gender-affirming care. Is it a coincidence? When do we stop calling it bigotry and start calling this pattern recognition? Because when I made a video covering that article about Metroid Prime 4, I was coming into it not from a place of hate, as abrasive as I might sound sometimes, but a place of understanding. I've been watching the pot come to a boil for a very long time. And look, most of us don't care about your beliefs or what pronouns you use, as long as you're not trying to force them on other people. And that's why America is, or at least what America used to be, is such a great place. It's because we allow ideas like this to exist as long as they're not hurting other people. But here's the problem. It's one thing to allow a certain group of people to exist. It's another thing to allow that same group of people to put their ideas in the minds of your children. And I've always found transgender ideology to be weird and uncanny. It's very unnatural to me, impossible for me to understand, almost like I'm witnessing a cult, a religion of sorts, and I just can't place my finger on it. I've seen a religious figure before that symbolizes gender fluidity, but I just can't remember what popular figure symbolizes the singularity of both man and woman. I'm really trying to remember. Maybe one day I'll remember the name, but this is part of the video where I want to make it clear that this is for entertainment purposes only. And if you're still with me, this video is going to get a little strange and maybe even a little unsettling. Now, I understand that extraordinary claims need extraordinary evidence, and information is very important for context, so I just want to show you a clip that I put together myself while coming up with this video topic, and whatever you see, make of it what you will.
I wanted to make a video to thank my daddy for letting me be who I wanted to be. Guys, can you do this with your hands?
Yeah.
Okay, now put it on your cheek.
Okay.
No. Guys, put it on your cheek, okay?
Yeah.
No, put it on your cheek.
We're doing exactly as you're saying.
No, you're not. This is your cheek. This is your nose. What are you guys doing?
You were doing that.
What? No, I wasn't.
What?
And then you look at Hollywood. How many Holly weirdos have transgender kids? Transgender is like 1 out of a million, but in Hollywood it's like 1 out of 3. And if your kid, and even when they adopt the kid, somehow the kid turns trans. So even when the kid doesn't even have your DNA and it's from China or Africa, all of a sudden it becomes trans.
And you can see this hand sign along with a lot of others that constantly reoccur throughout mainstream media in Hollywood. And then you have people like the reptile Peter Thiel of Palantir, the Lord of the Rings himself, saying things like this.
You would prefer the human race to endure, right? You're hesitating.
Yeah, well,
yes?
I don't know. I would
This is a long hesitation. This is a long hesitation.
There's so many questions implicit in
Should
this.
the human race survive?
Yes.
Okay.
But I also would I also would like us to radically solve these problems.
Right.
And so, you know, it's always, I don't know, you know, yeah, transhumanism is this, you know, the ideal was this radical transformation where your human natural body gets transformed into an immortal body. And there's a critique of, let's say, the trans people in a sexual context, or I don't know, a transvestite is someone who changes their clothes and cross dresses, and a transsexual is someone where you change your, I don't know, penis into a vagina, and we can then debate how well those surgeries work. But we want more transformation than that. The critique is not that it's weird and unnatural. It's, man, it's so pathetically little. And okay, we want more than cross-dressing or changing your sex organs. We want you to be able to change your heart and change your mind and change your whole body. And then Orthodox Christianity, by the way, the critique Orthodox Christianity has of this is these things don't go far enough. Like that transhumanism is just changing your body, but you also need to transform your soul, and you need to transform your whole self. And so,
right. But the other, wait. I generally agree with what I think is your belief that religion should be a friend to science and ideas of scientific progress. I think any idea of divine providence has to encompass
the tech place can be a very strange place. The Tower of Babel. Think of this video as like an iceberg that's only going to get weirder the further you go down. But honestly, like I said, a lot of this is for entertainment only. I don't claim to think that any of this is true. I'm just making this video for fun. But anyways, why do I have the Tower of Babylon on screen right now? Well, why do we call PCs towers? Could there be a correlation there? Quantum computing. For those of us who have read the story, it was about man's hubris, the ambition to become as God, and the origins of diverse languages and cultures. Quantum computers, large learning models, trying to decode the mysteries of the universe. Maybe the weirdos in the technocratic space want to reenact biblical events, but with a modern twist. Or it could be even darker. We've all heard of the RAM prices going up and how all of this RAM is being used to fuel AI infrastructure. They sure need a lot of RAM to build out these massive data centers. And then you have 3i Atlas, which I won't go into a lot of detail about, but I believe NASA likes to lie to us about a lot of things. I mean, just look at the logo itself. Not only do we have the snake's tongue, but we also have Ouroboros, the snake eating itself, life, death and rebirth, unity and self-creation. It's a very strange logo, and even the letters themselves seem to be a strange decision. You ever wonder why they use T- before they launch rockets up into the sky? I've always thought this was pretty funny, but NASA has every letter you need to spell Satan, minus the T. Now, what if the trans movement was really transhumanism in disguise to desensitize us and soften us up to the idea of becoming more than human? And what if all of this at its core was an evil religious cult?
However, the most intelligent inhabitants of that future world won't be men or monkeys. They'll be machines, the remote descendants of today's computers. Now, the present-day electronic brains are complete morons, but this will not be true in another generation. They will start to think, and eventually they will completely outthink their makers. Is this depressing? I don't see why it should be. We superseded the Cro-Magnon and Neanderthal men, and we presume we're an improvement. I think we should regard it as a privilege to be stepping stones to higher things.
Entertainment purposes. Now, a lot of conspiracy theorists like to attach themselves to this idea that by 2030, the elites want to replace us, or at least start to replace us. That all of this stuff with AI is secretly being built around us to get us to consent to an all-digital future that will monitor and control us 24/7. Absolutely ludicrous, and you shouldn't believe a word they say. It's just coincidence. You should stop noticing these things. Even when you hear weird things like this.
Globally, we are so far above the population and the consumption levels which can be supported by this planet that I know in one way or another it's going to come back down. So I don't hope to avoid that. I hope that it can occur in a civil way, and I mean civil in a special way, peaceful. peace doesn't mean that everybody's happy, but it means that conflict isn't solved through violence, through force, but rather in other ways. And so that's what I hope for. That we can, I mean, the planet can support something like 1 billion people, maybe 2 billion, depending on how much liberty and how much material consumption you want to have. If you want more liberty and more consumption, you have to have fewer people. And conversely, you can have more people. I mean, we could even have 8 or 9 billion probably if we have a very strong dictatorship, which is smart. It's, unfortunately, you never have smart dictatorships. They're always stupid. So, but if you had a smart dictatorship and a low standard of living, you can have it. But we want to have freedom and we want to have a high sentence. So we're going to have 1 billion people. And we're now at 7, so we have to get back down. I hope that this can be slow, relatively slow, and that it can be done in a way which is relatively equal, so that people share the experience and you don't have a few rich, trying to force everybody else to deal with it. So those are my hopes. I mean, these are pretty pessimistic hopes, but that's.
Or when you hear weird things like this.
Klaus Schwab is getting worried. His WEF 2030 agenda has been exposed by his own arrogance about having penetrated the cabinets with his WEF puppets like Sunak in the UK, also Trudeau in Canada, and they now fear the masses rising in a revolution against the elitists and the globalists. New World Order. He attacks Brexit and criticizes Trump 2024. They are becoming afraid. So watch this. So now they've been talking openly about having all their WEF little buddies in all the cabinets and all the Western governments.
Yeah, for the stakeholders.
And he said that out loud. Now people know, and people are getting upset about it. Well, here's what he says now.
For this reason, what we have seen in the elections in the United States, in the Brexit vote, this anger of people against globalization and against the elites. If you look what's happening in the United States, particularly, you have this anti-system movement. What we are seeing is a revolution against the system. It's dismantling the system, and we see certain elements of this now in the new US administration.
So he's saying, the people are rising up against the system that we created, that we've entrapped them in. People are rising up against it. And by the way, the most important thing to remember about this is none of it's a conspiracy.
I know.
Yeah. This melted wax statue of Colonel Klink has been very open about this plan the whole time. The idea, they had no idea anyone would have a problem with this.
Yeah, all those, like, you'll own nothing and love it. They put it out, the statement. People look at it. They're like, oh, everyone's mad. You got to debunk the thing we literally just said. And you can't because you said it, so they got to go, no, but it's not bad. What are you making this into a bad thing? There's going to be no elections. We have a predictive, prescriptive model.
You'll own nothing and like it. You'll own nothing and like it.
Yeah, you should probably not pay attention to any of that. These people, they're crazy and they have no idea what they're talking about. Another thing I find really strange is how LEDs work. If you take a video of your LED bulbs and slow it down, it seems to flicker rapidly. Another thing that conspiracy theorists like to talk about is mind control, which is absolutely ridiculous. You shouldn't pay attention to it at all. But I have been seeing a lot of strange news stories, and don't worry, we're still on the topic of the whole trans movement. This is just a lot to unpack, so it needs a lot of context. The first one is this strange occurrence of purple light sightings around the country.
So you're telling me that these purple streetlights that people are seeing across the country is because all of these lights are going bad? They're saying that there's a coating that comes with these LED lights that causes them to turn white, and without that coating, they turn purple, aka they should be covered by warranty to get replaced. But they're popping up all over the country, and nobody's replacing them. Oh, we have to wait. Oh, we're working on it. Literally, if you Google purple streetlights, there's an article from every major city. Here's the Carolinas. Here's Florida. If you have seen these purple lights, please tell me what you think is really going on, because I don't think that they're going bad. It just doesn't make sense mathematically why they would all go bad at the same time. And even though they're covered by warranty, they're not getting replaced. It's just fishy.
So last weekend, I was driving home with my wife on the Florida Turnpike, and I happened to notice these purple lights. And I've noticed them since 2021, 2020, basically the post C19. And they keep saying it's a manufacturer defect. They're going to go ahead and change them out. And they never do. Matter of fact, I see more of them than ever before. And around the same spot of the turnpike where I drive under these lights, I feel weird. I don't feel bad, I don't feel good, it's just a weird feeling. And apparently, according to this video and other articles, I'm not the only one.
I really don't want to sound like a crazy person, but when I walked past this light, I felt strange. I still feel kind of weird, and I don't want to sound crazy, but like, what's the purpose of this? I know maybe you can see the...
Now look at this logo of blue sky. Does it remind you of anything? Does it remind you of anything at all? Now we know DARPA has been heavily involved with blue light technology that spans across neuroscience and epigenetics that control brain circuits with light. The reason your phone emits blue light is because, well, DARPA wanted it that way. A lot of the technology we use in our phones, the US military is responsible for, like the iPod, internet, cellular technology, multi-touch screens, things like Siri. Here's a strange coincidence. What is Siri spelled backwards? Another thing I found interesting is blue light from LEDs use phosphorus and magenta light, which our eyes perceive when red and blue light mix together. And I also want to add that the US has banned most incandescent light bulbs. You may have never heard about that one. You may have seen the color magenta a lot lately. It's a very strange color. Now there might not be anything to this, but check this out.
Now, did you know that in the 40s they changed the colors? Red for girls, blue for men. Now, what happened in the 40s?
It is now 12 years ago since I produced the first little flickering television image. Today we have in London a regular television service, twice daily, with thousands of lookers in. Television has grown from a scientific novelty to a commercial service.
It was the introduction of the color TV. Now take a look again at cyan and magenta. Who is waving these two colors? It's the transgender cult. Now there's a lot of promotion going on in football. Barbie and Kenny, Trumpy and Epstein. I wonder who's the girl here. Queer Starmer.
Michael and I also want to acknowledge your son Jack, who's deployed today.
Born in the wrong body. Now, if you are born in the wrong body, this seems to confirm that there is something like reincarnation. What if you were born in the red frequency, but you arrive in a world where male is blue? What would you think? Hey, I was born in the wrong body. Wasn't I supposed to be male? So the reason of this transgender cult might be color-based. Now you may ask yourself, is this coincidence?
For example, if I shine red light and green light into your eyes at the same time, if I cross these over, you will see yellow. So when you mix red and green together, you get yellow. And if you look at the spectrum, yellow is in between red and green. So maybe that's the rule for mixing colours together. You mix two colours together, you get the colour in between on the colour spectrum. And we can test that again, so I'll look at green and blue together. So if I mix green and blue together, I get cyan. And cyan is in between blue and green on the spectrum. So that's great, you mix two colours together, you get the colour in between. So what about purple, what about magenta? Well, what should your brain do if your red cone fires at one end of the spectrum and your blue cone fires at the other end of the spectrum, but your green cone doesn't fire? Does it do the same trick? Does it think, I must be looking at a colour in between red and blue? Well, the colour in between red and blue is green, and you're definitely not looking at something green because your green cone isn't firing. So in that situation, your brain invents a colour. It makes up a colour, and that colour is magenta. And I can show you that. So with my red and blue torches, so when they combine together, there you see magenta. Absolutely beautiful.
Magenta. There is no wavelength of light for magenta. Instead, we perceive it only when the S cones and L cones pick up a signal from pure red and blue light.
Also, magenta sounds a lot like magent, which is Portuguese for bad person. Now, the whole thing with spelling Siri backwards and finding hidden messages, it's because when you're really in tune with signs and symbols, they can uncover hidden meanings, even when it comes to anagrams and simple things like backward spelling. Take this hat, for example. What happens when you spell them backwards? Well, you get this. Just something I found very interesting. Of course, we know about the recent new photos, and I'm sure a lot of you have seen this photo before. Just a strange coincidence. I'm not saying anything at all, just throwing it out there. But what if everything that's going on right now was part of this big operation? Order out of chaos. Problem, reaction, solution. What if everything you see on mainstream media is a manufactured problem and they're waiting to see your reaction so they can offer a solution that was probably made before the problem even existed? What if all of this red versus blue is just a distraction? Remember, there's no wavelength of light for magenta. Mixing red and blue doesn't exist. In other words, what if everything we've been fighting each other over was manufactured to deceive us? Cyan and magenta. Cyan is a really strange color. Try saying that once 5 times fast.
Magenta. There is no wavelength of light for magenta.
But that's it for me. This was just a funny idea I had for a video about one of my favorite video games, Mortal Kombat Ultra, and why I think we've been seeing all of this push from the trans movement in mainstream media lately. Because it's perfectly normal to want gender-affirming care for children, right? There's no brainwashing going on here. There's no hidden meanings or ulterior motives at all. I just want to make that clear. Also, I forgot to mention, OpenAI CEO Sam Altman is obsessed with codifying your biology. He's been funding a biomedical startup to read human brains using sound waves. And man, the picture in this article looks so revealing with all that magenta and cyan going on. But yeah, that's it for me. I'll catch you in the next one. Later.